maintain a strong financial foundation for the future growth. You'll also see in today's presentation that we make big investments in solutions to some of our city's greatest challenges. Next slide. Thank you. During last year's budget cycle, we were laser focused on providing our community a sense of hope. At the time, there was a significant amount of uncertainty, both in terms of the virus as well as our community's financial future. Since then, however, things have changed. Most notably, we have 3 safe and effective vaccines, and anyone the ages of 12 and older can get vaccinated free of charge. And while we still have progress to make, we have turned a corner, and now we are very optimistic about the future of DC, the future of DC's fiscal health. And the mayor's proposed budget is a representation of that and is growing, by this illustration on the screen here, by 5.8%. The district's growth is supported by roughly $561 million in federal relief funds as well. Next slide. This slide here just represents the mayor's gross fund budget, which is about $17.5 million and includes funds that support our Medicaid, our Medicare, and our Alliance programs for schools, parks, and transit infrastructure, as well as our critical public safety programs. Next slide. This slide here represents the mayor's budget proposes about $9.1 million in local fund spending, excuse me. And as you can see here by this illustration, much of these funds are supporting our school systems, both DCPS and the charter schools, as well as the healthcare needs of the district residents. Next slide. Now, the mayor's committed, this is our capital fund slide, the mayor's committed to investments in improving the infrastructure of the District of Columbia. And we have proposed historic investments in the district's transportation infrastructure, which I'm most pleased with, as well as with DC Public Schools, and also our parks and recreation facilities, and including our public works. Next slide. This particular slide represents, and this is a great illustration of how we were able to really manage through the pandemic. The district has 4 reserve funds designed to provide flexibility during difficult financial times. The current public health crisis has required the district to use its reserve funds to respond to COVID-19. In the mayor's budget, we plan on replenishing the full use of the reserve funds by the end of fiscal year 2024. Will be fully replenished. And so this is a great illustration, again, of the cash flow reserves that we had to use, which was really to pay for the everyday expenses, including like payroll, the contingency cash that illustrates in the second illustration there, was available for unanticipated and non-recurring expenses. And then the fiscal stabilization fund was used to cover revenue shortfalls experienced by the district government. So again, great illustration here. And the last slide, or the last illustration there, is the emergency reserve funds, which we did not have to tap into. Next slide. So here on the anticipated American Rescue Plan funds, the mayor's budget makes strategic investments in the district's recovery using available or anticipated federal funding provided as a part of the American Rescue Plan. This includes about $1.8 billion in state fiscal recovery funds and over $2 billion in direct aid to our hospitals, to our DC Metro program, to our area businesses, to tax credits, and to stimulus payments to individuals, unemployment insurance, and more. Next slide. Next slide. Hey, Cynthia, next slide.
Maybe Cynthia dropped off. Oh, looks like her.
There we go. Thank you. Okay, thank you. How we use our federal relief funds. So Mayor Bowser's budget calls for significant funds to support our economic recovery, including about $486 million in investments for economic recovery of our residents and about $427 million in economic recovery supporting our businesses. The mayor's budget supports the district's health needs and is a continued support for our COVID-19 response as we continue to move out of the pandemic. Next slide. So now we're going to talk a little bit about just the different pillars of this budget, and we're going to start off with public education and the learning acceleration. These resources that we spend here are really extremely important. We had a high impact tutoring for all DCPS students, school-based mental health services for every DCPS student in every DCPS school. And then we also had investments into the early Saturday morning programming at park and recreation facilities. This particular budget, totaling about $3.5 billion, represents about a 3.6% increase in the foundation level of the uniform per student funding formula, plus increased weights for English language learners and at-risk students. Also, you'll find in this particular budget that it's about $8 million to expand school-based mental health programs and mental health services to all remaining DC public schools, as well as DC public charter schools. Next slide. Next slide. Keep going, Cynthia.
I think her connection might just be bad.
Yeah, I think all having little technical difficulties. There we go. Thank you. Childcare. Perfect. So, thank you. So this slide represents what we spend in childcare, and roughly the total budget in our childcare initiatives is about $182 million, of which we make about $54 million, or set aside about $54 million for grants. These are stabilization grants for all 425 licensed childcare centers to help mitigate the losses that they experienced during the public health emergency. And also about $68 million of this budget are increases to access to high quality, affordable childcare, and also provides incentives and scholarships for every childhood education center and education teacher. So really pleased in the amount of efforts and resource that we've seen going into the childcare industry, knowing that they have suffered some difficult times during this pandemic. Next slide, Cynthia. Perfect, thank you. The healthcare and human services total we're spending, as I had said earlier, schools and health and human services were the two areas that received the largest increases in the budget. And right now we're spending roughly in this proposed budget about $5.3 billion for healthcare and human services. The increased funding continues to support our 5 centers of excellence at Howard University Hospital. It also will support affordable food access and expand the produce and the North DC Fund and increase our senior meal delivery. You'll find in this particular budget that it's about $15 million to support small businesses and residents whose health insurance premiums are in the arrears, about $75 million to support ongoing testing, vaccinations, isolation and quarantine cleaning, and PPE and other needs. So we're still got a major commitment to the COVID-19 response, even as we're moving out of the COVID-19 pandemic. Next slide. Affordable housing is extremely important to Mayor Bowser. This commitment shows $887 million in total fundings, of which $233 million will be used for different types of agency grants that they will award. This illustration here shows an historic contribution to the Housing Production Trust Fund of roughly about $400 million to create 2,800 affordable units, which will help get the mayor and the mayor's budget closer to the goal of 36,000 new affordable homes by the year 2025. With 14,404 new housing units delivered, in January of 2019, the district has reached roughly about 40% of our goal right now. And this budget represents about $352 million in rent and utility assistance to prevent evictions through the Stay DC program. Next slide. Public safety and gun violence. Total budget here is roughly $1.5 billion. The relief funds it received are roughly about $59.7 million. And I want to talk a little bit about what you'll find in this particular budget. $11 million will be for support for returning citizens, which will allow for cash assistance, financial coaching, and also peer navigators as they transition back into the community. You also find that about $7.8 million for additional, roughly about 52 additional violence interrupters, 11 case managers, and also 6 credible messengers to reduce gun violence. This budget also includes the MPD Cadet Program, and this will allow for 100 new cadets. And I want to talk a little bit about this particular program. This cadet program actually starts through our local high school programs, allows high school students to be trained. They ultimately will, those who have an interest in law enforcement will come up through the high school ranks, be able to start out as cadets after they graduate. And then as they successfully make their way through that particular program, they will be made as a sworn officer. So this particular budget allows for 100 additional cadet slots for incoming students, primarily in the high school system. And then the last thing here, a couple last things. We have $6.8 million that will be used to support different agencies, including DDOT, DPW, and also the Department of Behavioral Health to respond to non-emergency 911 calls for mental health, for distress, for minor traffic crashes, and also for parking complaints. So we're really excited about the investments that have been made here and feel that this budget really reflects what we've been hearing from the community in terms of what the needs are. Next slide. Thank you. The economic recovery for residents, this budget represents a total of about $243 million, of which $103 million were relief funds. What you'll find in this particular budget is $57.7 million are being used to expand the access to grocery stores and sit-down restaurants, specifically in Ward 7 and in Wards 8 over the next 3 years, including about $2 million over 2 years for the Nourish DC Fund. Also, what you'll find is there's about $30 million over 2 years to attract high-impact employers to the district to increase employment opportunities. Next slide. For the economic recovery for businesses and neighborhoods, realizing that many of our businesses really suffered through the pandemic, and now they're on the back end of it, wanted to make sure we're providing some type of additional assistance and relief to help them as they're all pulling out of the pandemic. This particular budget, our resources for this fund's about $267 million. $74 million came from relief funds, and there will be roughly about $51 million that will be provided for specific grants that will be used in the aid of these businesses. $8.1 million will be used to increase the funding for the Great Streets program and commercial ownership of opportunities for small businesses, and to support the Shop in the District campaign and also the app. And then the last thing here, just so that I want to highlight, is there'll be roughly about $8 million for a bridge fund for the arts venues in the district to support their successful reopening. Next slide. And my favorite slide, transportation and the environment. Roughly, the total funds for this represents about $431 million. We did receive a significant pool of relief funds, totaling roughly about $139 million. And we're really excited about what you're going to find here in this particular budget. $351 million will be used for streetscapes, trails, and our Vision Zero program. This also includes the DuPont Crown Park or the deck over, as well as the new South Capitol Street Trail to the National Harbor, which we're really excited about. $116 million you'll find will be used to support the K Street Transit, which will allow for us to have protected bus lane and protected bike lanes all the way through DC, or downtown, excuse me. And this will allow for increased headways and definitely much more efficient bus services along the K Street corridor. In addition, we have about $9 million that we're going to use to what we call reclaim the streets for public use through the monthly street closures program. Black Lives Matter Plaza is one that I think most people are familiar with, but we'll also be looking at doing this on Pennsylvania Avenue, on 18th Street Northwest, and 7th Street Northwest, and also on F Street Northwest. And then these funds also will allow for one-time open streets that will be done in each particular ward, which we'll be working with the different wards and the different ANCs throughout the year to develop those programs. And then just a couple of the highlights on this particular budget, which I'm really excited about. And this budget will allow for us to have 80 new capital bike share stations, which will then allow every resident in Washington, D.C. to have a capital bike share station within about a quarter mile of their home. In addition, there's going to be about 3,500 new e-bikes that we'll be adding to our bike fleet. And we'll also be adding an additional 30 miles of protected bike lanes over the next 3 years. And then the last thing that I just really want to highlight is that this budget allows for us as an agency, and this is not just specific to the ward, but to all of DC government, or all of DC, is that this will allow for all of our streets, our sidewalks, and our alleys to be in a state of good repair by the year of 2025. So I'm really excited about this budget and all the resources that you'll see here, really to improve safety for all our roadway users, whether you're on foot, whether you're a bicyclist, or whether you're a vehicle user. Just have a couple more slides, then I'll turn it back over. Last thing on capital improvements. Thank you. This particular slide illustrates, again, about a $8.8 billion total funds and about $195 million in relief funds that were added. This will allow us to modernize about 40 of our schools, either modernize, expand, or renovate our schools. And these schools include a variety of educational centers, educational campus, both elementary, middle school, and high schools. It also will allow us to replace the H Street Bridge to improve our safety and support our Union Station redevelopment and expansion program, which will allow for high-speed rail in and out of DC. So next slide. So again, as I close, despite facing the unprecedented financial challenges that were posed by COVID-19, this pandemic, the mayor's budget makes significant investments, new investments, I might add, in education and healthcare, in housing and jobs, in economic development opportunities, and also in transit, public transit, and public safety. So we're really hopeful and grateful and feel like this particular budget is definitely responsive to our needs. And because of the strong financial and fiscal planning of the district, we're sitting really in a very positive posture in terms of how we're looking in terms of our fiscal perspective. So I want to thank you again for this opportunity, and I'll turn it back over to the ANC and be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
So Chair Turner wanted me to facilitate some questions. So if there are any folks from the community that are on the line, please put those questions in the Q&A. While you're doing that, I did just want to say that as an ANC, we are collecting feedback from the community. We're going to put out a letter highlighting our priorities in the mayor's budget and also highlighting areas where perhaps the council needs to devote a little bit more attention and resources. While those Q&As are rolling in, I will turn it over to Commissioner Ewert, who has his hand up, and he's also our Transportation Committee Chair. So it's very fitting that we have Acting Director Lott and the DDOT staff as our lucky representatives from the mayor's office. So I will pass it over to Commissioner Ewert.
Thank you, Commissioner Bena, and thank you, Acting Director Lott, for presentation. I have a couple questions. Would it be easier for me to ask them all or go through them one by one?
If we can go one by one.
Okay, sounds good. So the first one's on Vision Zero. I understand that $350 million have been allocated for street repairs or streetscapes and Vision Zero. I'm wondering why not fully funding the Vision Zero bill, and what aspects of that those allocated funds will be dedicated to Vision Zero projects.
So thanks for that question, Commissioner. And, I was at one of the other wards, I think it was 1C, community meetings last night, and had a very similar question, if not the exact same question. And what I shared with the commission there last night was that how we look at Vision Zero, just from an agency or department perspective, is that's just the tag or the label, but we look at it as safety. And safety is the main objective here. And so you heard about the $351 million we're investing in streetscapes, including Vision Zero, but in all of our programs, and we have over a $1 billion budget, all of our programs are incorporating safety in them. So in every streetscape and every roadway design, whether it's Black Lives Matter Plaza, whether it's Dave Thomas Circle, K Street Transit, all of those are incorporating safety. And so when you look at it from that perspective, we have incorporated safety in terms of making the roadway safer for all users of the roadway throughout everything that we're doing. So I know a lot of folks are focusing on just $350 million and think that's all comprehensive, but it really is not in terms of the amount of safety that we're putting into any program or any type of roadway improvement that we're making throughout the district.
All right. My second question is about the dedicated funds for U Street. 1.7 million is dedicated for U Street. Does that include expanding sidewalks?
I don't know if I have the specifics on the detailed specifics on that, so I'll have to maybe take a note and get back to you on that, Commissioner. I don't know if we have the things on that, but it is a streetscape design. It's about 1.7, and that's going to go from 14th Street to 18th Street. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if sidewalks are included in that. So we'll have to take a note and get back to you on that one.
Okay, thank you. And then the last thing was regarding two of the pilot programs that we went through over the course of the pandemic, the Streeteries and Slow Streets. Is there any plans to kind of reincorporate this or those programs as formal programs? And if so, how would that be reflected in the budget?
Well, the Streeteries are definitely here to stay. We are working now, we have been working with many of the different bids throughout the district now to figure out how we can incorporate or maintain streeters, but also make sure it's safe as we're starting to open back up and starting to have more enforcement along the roadways. So right now you will see, I think most all, if not all the streeteries that were existing during the COVID pandemic are still in existence now. We have made some precautionary measures to support and protect them and also protect the user of the roadway. In terms of the slow streets, that, as you know, ended at the end of May. And we had made some announcements several months earlier that was going to be ending. And so how we're revisioning or kind of rethinking about how that's going to look now. And one of the investments that we are making that may be kind of the 2.0, which I had referenced a little bit earlier, is the open streets concept. Where we'll have open streets in some of the major areas, but then also have an open street concept or smaller open street concept for each of the different wards throughout the year. And so that's kind of what we're thinking about now. We have not fully baked that particular plan yet, but I do know that slow streets, as we all knew it and during the pandemic, will not exist as it was then, primarily, again, because now it's safer for people to get out, and we want to create some type of safe space for people to be able to get out of their homes during that pandemic. But now that it's become a little bit safer, we're looking at some other ways to provide some open spaces.
All right, thank you.
And really quickly, we did get two questions. We got a question in the chat and a question in the Q&A, and they're both related. So I'm going to lump them together. And it's essentially, what considerations are being made for residents that need more parking and not less, especially considering curbside dining, bike lanes, taking up parking. So that's a bit of there were two questions on that perspective. So I wanted to run that by you as well.
Yeah, so that's we're having to carefully kind of balance our curbside management. There's a lot of needs and a lot of requests that have been made for how we're using the curbside. And so, we're really looking at it really community by community to see how we're going to be using the curbside space. But it is a balance that we're going to have to make, because we do know that there are demands for individuals that are using, still drive and have in cars. But we also know there's other demands for pickup and drop off, for bike lanes and whatever. So we're really trying to have a fine balance to where we can accommodate all the needs that are being represented.
Yes. Okay, it looks like we're right at 7. Chair Turner, do we need to move on? Can we have a little extra time? There was one more question. An attendee is concerned.
Take another 5 minutes. This is an important discussion to have.
Got it. Okay. There's an attendee that said that the mayor specifically dedicated Vision Zero as a signature program. It appears that the administration is backing away and calling it just a tag. Can you speak to that, Acting Director Lott?
Yeah, again, safety is what Vision Zero is. And when we talk about Vision Zero, we talk about safety and improving safety for all users of the roadway. And so as I had mentioned to the last commissioner who asked that question, and as I shared, I had a very similar question yesterday at one of the other ANCs, we are incorporating safety in all of our programs, in all of our roadway designs and all of our projects. And this is safety to make sure that it's improving safety for vehicular traffic, for bicyclists, for pedestrians, for all users of the roadway. And so I just want to be clear that Vision Zero is about safety, and we as a transportation entity and a transportation agency we're about safety. And so again, we've incorporated safety in all of our projects, and you'll see that in any of the designs that we're going to be implementing here, particularly in your ward, but throughout the district as well.
Thank you. Let's go to Commissioner Handerhand first, and then Commissioner Nelson on deck.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Reyna. I would just like to thank you, Acting Director, for the presentation. Just reiterate all the support that I think a lot of members of our communities have, of our SMBs have for the affordable housing investments, particularly what's in the trust fund. I think that that feels like a really significant investment in an urgent need. I had a question about the public safety investments. There's been a lot of conversations about preventative upstream kind of non-MPD driven public safety interventions, and you touched on that a little bit, and I do see some of that in the presentation. I was wondering if there's anything specifically targeting youth. This is an issue that a number of us have heard from our constituents about. Particularly during the pandemic, when you have fewer programming for kids, it's easier to get into trouble. And so just trying to understand how the district is thinking about the burden that's on MPD right now, and how community and kind of the programs, the anti-gun violence programs, I think are fantastic, but just like more broadly investing in kids who might be at risk.
Yeah, so again, that's one of the things I have to circle back with you and give you some more specifics in that particular budget. But one of the things I really do want to highlight is what I had referenced a little bit earlier about the Cadet Program. And that is really kind of targeted at our seniors in high school. That program starts there and allows those seniors in high school to start going through the training program. Those that may have an interest in law enforcement, some of those that may have had some run-ins with the law. And it gives them a path to an opportunity and a path to a career in law enforcement. So that's 100 slots that have been designated there to add to what's already been in that program. In terms of some other specific investments related to youth specifically, that's something we'll have to circle back with you on if you will allow us to do that, please, sir.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Let's go to Patrick.
Good evening, sir. My question then relates to your comment about the fact that the city is going to keep the streeteries in place and not put them back to where they were before. What is the city's great plan in creating a real, if they're going to be permanent safety zone between where the people are sitting and where they're eating versus just putting up a plastic fence or piping? Are you going to require them to put in stone in the ground kind of safety things for these people driving along the street that could have the possibility of driving in and killing people?
Yeah, thanks for that question. So what we've done right now as an interim solution, and you'll see this is in many of the streeteries that are on some of the main streets, that we have used some of our Jersey barriers, which are concrete blocks that are being used to surround those particular streeteries. You're not going to find that in all locations, but we have put that in some of our quarters or areas where we may have more volume or more traffic. I think as we're starting to evolve and as we're realizing the streeteries are going to be here to stay, then we'll start figuring out exactly what other type of interventions that will make more permanent, things that either the streeters will be responsible for, or the businesses rather, and are some things that we may be partnering with them on in the future. But the interventions that we put in place now, and you'll see we have roughly about 40 throughout the district right now, are interventions that we do feel will provide that safety aspect in some of the areas that are really have more volume of traffic.
Great, thank you. Chairman Turner, should we move on to the representatives from MPD, or will we pick back up with them?
We're going to handle that during our formal meeting.
Okay, great. So then thank you to everyone from the community that submitted questions for the budget. Keep an eye out in our newsletter. We are going to have a little feedback form to gather more feedback from you so that we can incorporate that in our letter. Thank you.
Director Law, thank you for joining us this evening and giving us an overview of the mayor's budget. It's always a interesting time during budget, and we're certainly kind of in a crunch to get it done this year, given all the delays that have happened due to the pandemic. So thank you for joining us.
Well, Chair Turner, thank you for the time. Looking forward to working with each and every one of you as we proceed forward in the future. Thanks again.
Commissioners, will now call our formal meeting to order. This is our June monthly meeting. We're meeting via virtually via Zoom. Madam Secretary, will you call the roll?
Yes, Commissioner Handerhan.
Oh, got a promotion. Present.
Commissioner Orlowski.
Present.
Commissioner Luther. Commissioner Thomas.
Present.
Commissioner Sanchez.
Present.
Commissioner Floyd. Commissioner Ewart.
Present.
Commissioner Baina.
Present.
Commissioner Turner.
Present.
Commissioner Delaney.
Present.
Commissioner Harris. Present. That is a quorum of 9 out of 11.
Thank you. Commissioners, you have an agenda before you. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
I second.
All those in favor? Thank you. The agenda is approved. We have a consent agenda that includes one item, the May meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you. Commissioner Sanchez, update on education.
Sure. So we had a pretty informal meeting this last month because we only had a few committee members show up. So we started to look forward in terms of what types of planning we want to take into account for the next year. So some of the things that we discussed were looking at public safety in schools. There was a recently released report that we might want to have the authors come in and present to us. So we're on the lookout for things like that and engaging some of the NGO communities. So we're very open to suggestions. If there are things that 1B would like to see represented, we're happy to take community input. So please do reach out to me. Happy to take that back to the committee. Since we're in budget season, that also dominated a lot of the conversation that we had. So looking, some of the priorities we talked about was looking at increasing the out of school time funding, which as we just heard in some of the budget priorities will be taking into account, but we'll hopefully see some more of that. On the mental health resolution that we passed last month, we are looking to bundle that together into testimony that Commissioner Miller from 1A will be providing. So that was a great cross commission resolution, or different resolutions that we kind of passed in conjunction that we'll be able to support. So I think that's kind of it. We're looking towards what types of things we want to get involved and raise the committee's attention for the next year.
Thank you for that update. Before we begin public safety and engagement, I see that we're joined by Assistant Chief Immerman, and congratulations on the promotion. Very, very much deserved, and we look forward to working with you in this very important new role.
Thank you, Commissioner Turner. I don't want to hijack your meeting, but I appreciate a couple of seconds here. I wanted to come on personally and thank the community as well as ANC 1B. It's been 5 amazing years, 5+ years as Commander 3D, and without a doubt, the actions, the activity, the dedication to public safety of 1B has been unparalleled by any. And more importantly to me, the support that MPD and myself have gotten over those past 5 years. So I wanted to just make sure I got on, gave a heartfelt thank you to everybody. I'm leaving you in, I think, pretty good hands. Commander Kim, who many of you are familiar with, has been a former captain here in the 3rd District. I know he's going to do an excellent job. He has to, because I'm his boss now. So I have a vested interest in making sure that he does. But as the Assistant Chief of Patrol North, I will be responsible for the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th districts. So if Commander Kim can't handle it, he's going to come to me for some help, but I'm confident he will. But I will still be somewhat supervising the area and not more than an email or phone call away. So I just want to say thank you, and I appreciate it. I'm not going to stay on long, but thank you for giving me a few minutes, Commissioner Turner. Thank you.
We really do applaud your promotion and really look forward to your efforts as Assistant Chief.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
With us is Commander Kim. Congratulations, sir.
Good evening. Thank you very much. Talk about pressure. I got to follow my boss. But can everybody hear me? Okay. All right. So good evening again. Thank you for the invite. As you know, I did take over for Assistant Chief Emmerman. I was asked to just go over my background so you have an idea. I won't bore you. I'll be real quick. I started on the department as an officer in 1D and actually came over to 3D. So I actually did a lot of work as an officer in the 3rd District. After that, I moved around different parts of the department. And then I actually came back to the 3rd District as a captain in 2018 and actually worked for Assistant Chief Emmerman for 2 years. And during that time, I was managing Sector 2, the lower part of the 3rd District. And also during that time, I think you guys all know that 3D had the Fall Crime Initiative, which I also managed. And after that, I did leave for a year. I was gone this past year. And then when I got promoted behind Chief Emmerman there, I came back to the 3rd District. I remember when I was here, I was attending these meetings. I believe it was on U Street. So I think I do. I remember a few of you here working with a few of you. So I'm actually looking forward to it. And Chief Emmerman did, when I was being advised, did talk about how wonderful 1B was and how involved in the support that we had. So I plan on continuing that and hoping to big shoes here. I'm not hearing anything.
Chair Turner, you're on mute.
Commissioners, are there any questions for MPD?
Can I say one other thing before we
Sure.
leave? So we do have Lieutenant Justin Markowitz. I wanted to introduce him as well. He was promoted along recently as well. He's a lieutenant. He's going to be one of the supervisors, managers of 1B. So I wanted to introduce him as well.
Lieutenant, welcome.
Justin Markowitz, clearly. I'm excited to be here. I'm coming from the 2nd District. I'm going to be part of Sector 1, which encompasses 1B. I love being able to interact with the community, so I try to make myself as accessible as possible. I shared my email in the chat. It's Justin, Justin, Markowitz, Markiewicz at dc.gov. And my cell number is 202-317-2039. I am, like I said, I'm very excited to be here and work with everyone. I'm going to kind of rely on a lot of the commissioners to get to know the areas and the problems, being new to the 3rd District. But I look forward to building those relationships. So thank you. I also have some crime information whenever you guys would like it.
Chair Turner, if that's appropriate for right now.
Yeah, let's please share.
All right. So currently in the 3rd District, the crime is kind of being driven by theft from autos and stolen autos. The biggest tips for that are we ask people to please not leave valuables in their car, and also don't leave your vehicle running unattended. With the stolen autos, that's a big trend that we're noticing. To help with that, one of my favorite programs that the city offers is the Crime Camera Rebate Program. DC will give you up to $200 per camera, up to $500. All you have to do is agree to share the video if we request it, and that you're going to record the video. And $500 will get you a really great security system, or excuse me, camera system. We've made some significant closures in some of our crimes. We connected one individual who's linked to 4 burglaries, and another suspect has been identified for multiple burglaries throughout the entire city, some of which are in the 3rd District. A burglary prevention idea for people is always remember to lock your doors and windows. They're very low cost security systems out there that are highly effective, but basic prevention tips are always key. I'm open to questions, concerns.
Great.
Commissioner Hanrahan.
Thank you so much. I always really appreciate the MPD presentations, and I know my neighbors do as well. And congratulations to everyone on their new roles. So 2 quick issues. I don't want to take up a lot of time. The first is around the break-ins. They've hit 1B01 pretty hard in the past couple weeks. I want to thank you for the arrest that was made 2 weeks ago. I think that was it seems like very good and quick work by the team. You had mentioned a few of the preventative tips that could help folks there. And I'm actually hoping you could share a similar set of tips for safety for businesses that operate streeteries. That's a second area that has seen, at least in my part of Ward 1, a bit of an uptick recently with incidents for both the patrons and the staff that are getting increasingly alarming. I think that we as a community responded really well to the burglaries based on your advice, and was wondering if you could share additional safety tips for businesses.
So do you have like specific issues that the businesses are facing?
Yeah, there's 2 things happening in the 7th and T area. The first is relates to the youth conversation I heard a while ago, which is often harmless, but sometimes not. And so there's a much broader conversation, including with some folks who I know are joined as attendees tonight. And then that is maybe very specific to that immediate area. I think more broadly, what we've heard from businesses on the Florida Ave 7th U Street area is some challenges with substance abuse in the area, and I know panhandling is not illegal in the city, and remind people that frequently, but things like aggressive panhandling or people who are clearly intoxicated interfering with people in the streets.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think the role of the police department is sort of, I guess, evolving with as things are changing. I think the mental health initiative that is coming out, or excuse me, that came out, it may be helpful for some of these issues. With substance abuse, you tend to not want to criminalize the addiction, but you want to try and solve the problem. So the chief has talked to us about discretion and wanting officers to have discretion in the way they conduct business. And this could be one of those situations where not necessarily wanting to get somebody in the criminal justice system, but wanting to get somebody help. And there's going to be some road bumps along the way in figuring out exactly what everybody's roles are to solve the exact problems. But I think we can definitely have a path forward. With the substance abuse issues, if people are violent, you still need to call MPD to make the situation safe. I mean, that's first and foremost. And then once the scene is safe or the scenario is safe, we can try and reach out to community partners, other organizations to help the individuals if we can. And I think part of my role is going to be also to reach out to businesses and figure out what exactly their needs are. Because I know there's this broad idea of what their issues are, but once I talk to each business and figure out what their needs are, then I can better address it and figure out with my team, my officers during my shift, what the most effective way to deal with that is. And that'll be conversations that we have going forward that I'm of course willing to have.
So I'm gonna jump in for a second if you give me an opportunity. I think Lieutenant Markowitz hit a lot of good issues there, Commissioner, and there are some things beyond just criminal activity that we certainly have to address in that neighborhood. I know you've been very active, especially in that corridor there, with working to get some of these other resources and some of these other agencies to it. We can and we will continue to make arrests as the MPD. That's our job. That is a very short-term solution, and it's not going to give us that long-term solution that we're seeking. And I do unfortunately know the frustrations and the experiences that a lot of our businesses are having over there. And I certainly sympathize with them, but I think there's a lot more at play, as I think Lieutenant Markowitz is trying to explain here, than just an individual engaged in criminal activity. Some of the things that we're finding is our response times on some of these calls haven't been great, where we're finding that individuals have left before we're even getting to them. We're also finding at times our officers are maybe getting out of the car, coming up and finding out some information, and it's not something that they're fully acting on. So there's certainly improvement opportunities, improvement angles that we can have. But as I said, we're going to continue to do what we're here to do, which is, go out there, try to keep our community safe. We're going to continue to make arrests where appropriate, as Lieutenant Markowitz was alluding to. But there's also going to be a time and a question when is that the best use of the MPD resources, taking that individual who may have an addiction problem, who we're going to lock up, take to the hospital, who's going to be out in a few hours and is going to be right back on that same corner because the services and the needs that he has weren't met. And that's the issue that we're sort of trying to work past right now with our government partners and our social service partners. But there is still a role for MPD to act and to do our job here still.
And Chief, if I can add something real quick, also just a little question that Commissioner Henderhan had in terms of staff and safety of the people that are working in the area. When I was managing before I left for the year, we used to meet with the owners and managers of the businesses, establishments, restaurants, and we actually had our special liaison division actually come up with a plan. It was on a PowerPoint and all that. And any businesses that wanted to send their staff or managers, we would actually sit down with them and give them suggestions on safety, everything from safety to taking care of their patrons, went into what to look for, even of over serving of alcohol, that sort of thing. So hopefully we can get that going back again.
Thank you so much. I want to take more time. I just want to acknowledge the really thoughtful answers and say that we're here to partner with you on the community service side. And however we can be helpful, please let us know.
Commissioner Bena.
Yeah, I'll be quick. I had a specific question, but I will follow up with Commander Kim and Lieutenant Markowitz via email on there. Also in the chat, there was a question specifically about 14th and Clifton and 14th and Fairmont. That's also my district. So I'll follow up via email with you all because I know what that's about, and I encourage that person to reach out to me directly. And then I did just want to elevate an important question in the chat about community outreach related to the carjackings and break-ins. Is any of that being done in other languages? And if so, which ones? If someone could just speak about that, that would be great.
I believe it is, and let me get you a confirmation answer for that. But I know our special liaison units deal with that, and I'm in close contact with Captain Hong that's over there. So let me get that answer confirmed for you, and then I'll get back to you with it.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, last question, Mr. Nelson.
I have a quick question on what is the district's policy on motor scooters and motorcycles being parked in the street? Are they required to be registered, and are they monitored just like vehicles? I have a problem on my block with a new group that just recently moved in that seems to think that they can park all their motor scooters and parts and all kinds of stuff in front of their house and cover it with a tarp and then come out and work on them and drive up and down the street like they own the whole place.
So in the District of Columbia, there's 3 separate distinctions upon vehicles that are 2 wheels with engines. You have a motorized bicycle, which is the bottom of it. You have a motor-driven cycle, which is what your Lime Rebel mopeds are. That's a motor-driven cycle. And then you have a motorcycle. So the motorcycle being the highest has the highest engine capacities, and those require driver's licenses, registrations on those, and a driver's license motorcycle endorsement to operate those. Insurance, tags, the whole 9 yards. A motor-driven cycle, like one of those rental mopeds, requires a driver's license, but it does not need a motorcycle endorsement, and it requires tags and insurance and helmets. That's why those Rebel scooters or whatever they're called that rent them, they keep helmets in the back. So those are stoppable. We can issue tickets on those. Most of what we do with those is really education because people don't seem to understand about those, that there's a requirement for those to have helmets and licenses. But they also have to have license plates. So anybody you see driving around on the street that has a little sticker on the back of their moped that says 49cc, they still have to get a license plate. They still have to register that. All it just means is it's not the 50cc threshold of a motorcycle, but it is a motor-driven cycle. And then a motorized bicycle, to the best of my knowledge, because you very rarely see those, does not require license plates, if I'm correct. But so all those are things that require it. I did see somewhere in the chat a question popped up about ATVs. Those are all not street legal. So an ATV and a dirt bike, those are not street legal. They don't have side view mirrors. They don't have other safety features on them, turn signals, etc., which is what's required. So those are not allowed to be ridden on a street. And when we seize them, we destroy them. And that is also an arrestable offense to operate one of those on the street.
So then to have them parked in the street,
you're talking about the mopeds?
They must have tags?
Correct.
So final question is who is it? The police department? Do I do 311? Who do I notify to have somebody come out and check on that? Because
you can do it through 311, and then DPW's parking enforcement should be able to handle that. At the times when DPW is not available, they will dispatch to MPD. But a moped that is parked there without tags should have. And again, it's one of those things where we can identify the owners and educate them. That's probably a first good move, and let them know if they need to do it. But they are ticketable.
Okay.
Thank you for coming this evening, and congratulations again.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Public safety and community engagement, Ms. Farnan.
Thank you. And thanks, everyone. I will keep it quick here. You can see in the agenda, just have 3 specific updates to let you know. Second day of action, want to thank all our commissioners and community members who I'm sure some of you on as attendees attended and got out the word. Commissioner Bana and I had a nice drive-by on bikes and scooters during that second day of action. So that was a fun time. And of course, it was great to just spend the day getting the word out about the COVID-19 vaccine and encouraging our neighbors to make sure that they're getting vaccinated, make sure their families are getting vaccinated. Second point is just on these forums. I believe they're officially called Building Relationships and Partnerships forums that are held in partnership between Howard University and MPD. Chief Conti himself has been at these forums, and I joined this session 2 that happened in, I believe, early May now. Session 1 was in April, and then they'll have session 3 in June. So I wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that. It's on June 16th, starting at 7 p.m. We'll make sure to post that on our site and socials, but it's great. It was a great forum having young leaders from Howard University students to alums to just people like me who decided to join, share their thoughts and their ideas for policing in their communities with the chief. And then finally, just talking about, or sorry, maybe not finally, but just talking about the newsletter. If any of you haven't subscribed, we are still, the Public Safety Community Engagement Committee is still penning that newsletter weekly on Tuesday mornings. So make sure you sign up on our site to stay up to date with all these events that we discuss and everything there. And then finally, on June 24th, we'll be hosting our Public Safety Community Engagement meeting. We'll take a budget lens to this meeting, but we will have all actors who are available, MPD, CSC, which is our violence interrupter group in South Columbia Heights, and the like, available to come to that meeting. So please bring your questions, and of course, registration on our website. So thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any questions? ZPD, Mr. Nelson.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight we have one item that the commission needs to vote on. It's a property located at 2005 to 2013 11th Street Northwest. It's in an R2 zone. It's in 1B02, which is Dan Roleski's SMD, and they are going in front of HPRB with a request for us to review their concept design and massing of a proposed construction of a 6-story, 39-unit building at that property, which is currently a vacant parking lot. So the committee has reviewed the project and recommends that the ANC support the concept design and massing of the 6-story, 39-unit building at 2005, 2013 11th Street, with the following concerns being addressed: the needs to increase the amount of windows in the side yard dogleg southern wall to be cohesive to the eastern wall and compatible with code and the plan, and the developer also agree to use its best effort to redo the jazz mural that's currently on the northern wall of 2003 11th Street, either on the north or south wall of the building. Subsequent to our meeting, we requested that the architect redo their drawings and possibly get to the issues of the windows, and that has been done. So the renderings and drawings that were submitted to HPRB include the recommendation of the window changes, and they will still be working on the issue relating to the mural once they get an answer or figure out how they're going to deal with that. So both of the issues are still in play. One has been fixed through changes in the drawings, which the committee has already received a copy of to review, along with Dan Roleski. And the mural is something that will be worked on once they start construction, I assume. I know that was a mouthful.
Thank you. Commissioner Orlowski.
Yeah, hi. We are still in contact with the developers about finding somebody to recreate the mural. And that's something that's ongoing. Just wanted to be clear that the vote that was taken has is specific to design elements that were discussed at the ZPD meeting that would that would better lend themselves to the historic character of the neighborhood, and there are some preferences to do with windows. That being said, I would like to make a motion that the ANC support the committee's recommendation that we support the concept design and massing of the proposed 6-story 39 unit building at 2005 11th Street Northwest, with the caveats that Mr. Nelson presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioners, I believe there are some questions in the chat. Commissioner Orlowski, if you'd like to address any of those.
Sure. Let me find them.
Those are, Chair Turner, I believe, in reference to another development.
Yeah, that is for another development up the street, and I believe that the residents here would like a chance to discuss it a bit during the community announcements section. It's an unrelated project.
Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Mr. Nelson.
Okay, so our next meeting will be on Monday, June 21st at 6:30 via Zoom. All are welcome. We have interesting discussions.
Thank you. Economic Development. Commissioner Hanrahan.
Hi, everyone. Larry Handerhan, the chair of the Economic Development Committee here. Excited to be with you to provide an update on what has been a very busy month for us. I want to recognize there are several committee members on the phone as attendees, and just want to thank them for their service. Before I start with the committee business, I do want to offer a few points from U Street Main Street, who normally join us to give updates. And also, if any other members of Clean Streets or Main Streets are on the line and would like to share anything, please make a note in the chat. I just dropped a link, I should say, in the chat for anyone who is interested in filling out the COVID Business Needs Assessment, which is looking to get a better understanding about how the pandemic has impacted local businesses. You can see that in the chat, and that information will be used to advocate for City Council and other programming. Otherwise, U Street Main Street has been busy with a number of events, including the Funk Parade. They are getting ready for an activation around Juneteenth, and they would love you to participate in the survey. Just want to thank Gigi and the team, who I haven't been to a meeting they've missed so far, so really happy to have them as partners. Moving on to the committee business, you can see a lot of these updates in the agenda, but the 1B Economic Development Committee has been really focused on getting community engagement around the Rees redevelopment project. DEMPED held a disposal hearing for the site at the end of April, and we have now held 3 community meetings on May 4th, 11th, and 18th. To gather feedback on those proposals. I'm going to drop the links into the chat that give an overview of the 2 projects that have submitted a response to the RFP. In response to the discussions that the developers have had with us, the committee has, we fielded hours and hours of questions the development teams fielded hours and hours of questions from the community about what they want to see. We sent a follow-up set of question and answers that focused on each of the 2 plans around developing multifamily housing, employment, retail, public space and honoring history, transportation and the environment, and the overall management and development strategy. Those categories sync with what this ANC asked the community to focus, asked DEMPED to focus on. We're going to post all this information online and then make a recommendation to this body next month. So if this is something you're interested in, I really encourage you to join the conversation at the July ANC meeting, which is July 1st. up next for us, we're going to be discussing the question and answers in a public forum on June 8th at 6:30. Everyone is welcome to join that, although this is really an opportunity for the committee members to discuss the various plans, and then we will draft a resolution that will be submitted to this group for a vote. That resolution will be granted great weight by DEMPED, and am very appreciative that they have been a partner with us and agreed to take our feedback very seriously. So I think this is our effort to have a transparent process for a very important site, and really want to thank everyone who spent a tremendous amount of time in the past 5 weeks working on this. Once we wrap up the Reeve Center, we are not done. We are going to tackle the Housing Finance Agency site at 815 Florida Ave. We had a conversation with the Housing Authority, with the Housing Finance Authority, and once they receive responses to the RFP, we will engage in a similar, although slightly different in some ways, process to get community feedback about that site. So there is a lot going on U Street. I know I don't need to tell folks that, and definitely welcome anyone to join our meetings. Next meeting is June 8th. At 6:30, as I mentioned earlier. That is a meeting you could come and ask questions at, although it's predominantly a chance for the committee to deliberate. I'm going to pause there and do want to acknowledge Alex Padro from the Shaw Main Street. Looks like he's an attendee, and I don't know if there's a way to elevate him and see.
I already
if he wants
did.
to provide. Oh, perfect. Alex, great to see you. Please, would love to hear from you.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner, and greetings to all members of the commissions and members of the public. 3 announcements. Number 1, the ABC board has just made an emergency rulemaking that allows Main Streets to coordinate reimbursable details of MPD officers to assist ABC licensed establishments with security needs. They pay 65% of the cost. The businesses pay 35%. In the past, you had to be a bid in order to be able to coordinate that. Actually, the action on the part of the ABC board was as a result of a number of the businesses in the 1B portion of Shaw Main Street service area asking us to do this. So we're glad to be able to say that beginning on July 1st of this year, we'll be able to do that. And we've already lined up a significant number of businesses in the area that have pledged to participate in the program. So that will assist with public safety in the northern portion of the Shaw Main Street service area. So we're grateful for the opportunity to provide that service. Number 2, Shaw Main Street is going to be launching a round of micro grants to our businesses. These are specifically intended to assist with reopening activities. So we're calling them reopening micro grants and recovery micro grants. So all of the businesses in our service area in 1B from the west side of 11th Street up to Barry Place and to the east and to the south down to T Street are eligible. Applications will be by a very simple Survey Monkey form that will be announced in the next couple of days. So if you're a business owner, please watch for an email from us or reach out to us. If you're a commissioner representing businesses in that area, please do share that information with businesses. And last, and perhaps most excitingly, I'm glad to be able to announce, if folks have not already heard, that Art All Night will be coming back to the neighborhood September 25th, starting at 7 p.m. Saturday evening until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning on Sunday morning. This annual free overnight arts festival is something that Shaw Main Street started back in 2011 and now is spread to a number of different neighborhoods throughout the city, both in Bid and Main Street areas. And if you're an artist and a performer would like to participate, you can reach out to Shaw Main Street, or you can send a message through the artallnightdcshaw.com website. Or if you are a member of the public, put it on your calendar. Be sure to plan to come out. We have a large number of venues, both for performing arts and visual art venues in the 1B portion of the Shaw Main Street service area. So That's all I have for this evening. Thank you for your time. But if there are any questions that you have about Shaw Main Streets and the services that we provide, I'm always happy to answer any questions, or you can always reach us through our website at shawmainstreets.org.
Thank you so much for that presentation. I don't have anything else for economic development.
Thank you. Transportation, Commissioner Ewart.
All right, we've got a couple of things that we'll need ANC vote on for Transportation Committee. The first one is a Transportation Committee recommendation regarding the notice of intent on the 2500th block of 14th Street Northwest. Transportation Committee recommended full ANC support of the notice of intent to replace the removed bus stop with a loading zone, parking, and 25 feet pedestrian buffer, with the addition of continuing the painted bicycle lanes across 14th Street, across Euclid Street along 14th Street Northwest. This is in Commissioner Baina's district. If we could get a motion, that would be great. Or if you have any comments as well.
No, I'm happy that they are being relatively quick about repurposing the bus stop. The bike lane is maintained. There's a little bit of extra parking. Seems like a good compromise. So I'll motion to accept the committee's recommendation.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Can you tell me where the bus is gonna, where they're gonna put it back in the spot that they took it away from?
So they've already moved the bus lane further north along 14th Street. This is where the previous, sorry, not bus lane, sorry. They moved the bus stop up further north along 14th Street into the protected bus lane area. This is just, the previous bus stop was just south of the bus lane and is currently just an unprogrammed space. So no buses use it, and no one's allowed to park in it either. So DDOT is repurposing it for other purposes.
All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you.
All right, the second thing to vote on from the Transportation Committee is regarding a TSA request from a community member. This is in 1B12 and is for a, the request is for a slip lane to block the slip lane that currently connects U Street Northwest to New Hampshire Avenue Northwest. This is at the intersection of U Street, New Hampshire Avenue, and 16th Street. This is in Commissioner Harris's district. The Transportation Committee recommended full ANC support of the TSA request to add bollards to the slip lane that connects U Street to New Hampshire Avenue.
I think this is a good first step. Ultimately, I would like to see this slip lane closed. I think slip lanes encourage bad driver behavior. It's really not needed on this street, but excited at this next step because I think any community member wouldn't want something in an extreme, but I think this is a step in the direction to evolve it to ultimately shut this slip lane down. So with that, I move that the full ANC support of the TSA request to add bollards to the slip lane that connects U Street to New Hampshire Avenue.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Next item.
Next item is just a notification that the NOI request in 1B10 for on the border of 1B10 and 1A10 to remove a parking spot to allow for more space for cars to merge from Michigan Avenue onto Columbia Road Northwest. We voted to table the discussion and hold a vote at the next meeting. So we'll hold that vote at the June 9th meeting, which is next Wednesday. The last thing from the Transportation Committee is a Move DC resolution. Move DC is the long-range plan for how people move in DC. This is presented by DDOT and updated every 5 years. DDOT provided ANC commissioners with an update to Move DC and are requesting comments back by June 11th. So there's a resolution that's currently in the agenda packet. I believe it's page 16 if folks in the audience are interested in taking a look at it. There are a lot of good things in the Move DC plan. There are a lot of things that DDOT can do better. I tried to outline that it's a hefty resolution. So if anyone's interested in taking a deeper dive into that, they're more than welcome to. And they're welcome to reach out to me. Community members are welcome to reach out to me or come to the Transportation Committee meeting if they have any questions. But I would like to make a motion that the ANC support the resolution voicing support of Move DC with the recommended changes to the Move DC plan.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes.
And that's it from the Transportation Committee. Thank you.
Thank you. ABR?
Hi, everyone. We had a very full meeting. We heard presentations from a couple establishments. We looked over renewal applications from liquor stores. We discussed some longer term, more structural issues and discussions related to saturation of bars in the U Street area. So I urge folks to look at the full minutes for more details on that discussion. However, you will see on this agenda, we have 2 items that the committee needs to take a vote on. So the first one is 1839 7th Street Northwest. That is a new application for a liquor license for the forthcoming Stop Smackin' Restaurant and Lounge. That's in 1B01, Larry Handerhan's district. The committee, the establishment, Stop Smackin', asked for the ANC support for a stipulated license. So what a stipulated license is, it allows them to operate during the 45-day placard period, and they if a protest happens, they have to stop operating. But the committee did vote unanimously to support that request for a stipulated license. So the committee recommended full ANC support for that stipulated license for Stop Smackin'. So we need a motion from the committee to accept that today.
Is there any comments from the community in the chat on this item?
I don't see any right now. I will just note that that establishment did do a lot of community outreach. They responded to a lot of questions on our meeting, and they specifically knocked on doors of the adjacent apartments and things of that nature.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Hanrahan.
Sure. I would just reiterate that the only comments from the community that I've personally heard have been in support of this site, which has been vacant for a while, and would just agree that they have done an excellent job of outreach. So given that, I would like to propose that we support the ABR committee recommendation to support a stipulated license for Stop Smackin'.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, the next item is 2011 14th Street. That is Best Way Liquors. So that is a renewal application. They're going through the scheduled renewal process. All of the liquor stores do that at the same time. This is in 1B12, Commissioner Harris's district. The committee did take a vote recommending that the full ANC protest the renewal application of Best Way Liquors on all applicable grounds, including peace, order, and quiet. Commissioner Harris, do you want to speak at all on that, the reasoning behind it?
Yeah, I think the biggest reason is there are actually a few establishments that are opening on the block, and I think this is a good time to establish settlement agreements with all of them. We have seen some potential flags with Best Way in terms of the trash outside and the patrons that they are serving. I'm mindful of how I say this because I think it also depends on any of the business owners you ask on the block or any of the community members. I think I did meet with one of the owners, with Commissioner Thomas, and they seemed really willing to engage. So I think it's just overall a good time to set some of these agreements in place, since we are doing that with the other establishments that are opening.
Great, thank you.
Is this the liquor store that's at the bus stop?
Yes, it is.
Great. So, yeah, I'll just underscore what Commissioner Harris said about our committee trying to take a block-wide approach in this area, since it is a very crowded block. So with that, there is the recommendation from the committee to protest the renewal application of Best Way Liquors on all applicable grounds, including peace, order, and quiet. Are there any, we need a motion from the ANC.
Are there any comments in the chat?
I do not see any, no.
Okay. Commissioner Harris.
And I make a motion that the full ANC protest the renewal application of Best Way Liquors on all applicable grounds, including peace, order, and quiet.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you.
So our next meeting is Wednesday, June 16th at 7 p.m. We are still looking for more committee members, so please reach out to me if you're interested in that. Also, keep an eye out. We are going to be adding a lot of more information to the ABR committee website to hopefully clarify and demystify the process, since there is, it can be quite tedious and detailed, all the different ABRA dates and deadlines and information. So keep an eye out for that. That's all I have on ABR.
Thank you. I think outlining the process on that section will be very useful to the community and to actually to all of us. So thank you for doing that. Administrative, Commissioner Harris.
Yes, so this is just a brief update from the last commission meeting. I did revise our online meeting policies and our documentation guidelines, and the documents that we currently have on the site and that aren't on the site will be updated throughout the rest of this month.
Thank you. Excuse me. The 1B11 vacancy, today was the last day for challenges to the petitions. Unofficially, there was one candidate. And if no protests or challenges were filed by, I believe, 5 p.m. today, that candidate will be declared the winner and will be take the oath of office as soon as we get notification from BOE. So by July 1st, we will have filled that vacancy. We'll go to announcements, Office of the Mayor.
I don't believe Anthony Moore is on, so I think we can expect updates from him later on.
Council Member's Office, Oscar.
Hi, good evening, everyone. The DC Council has begun to hold public hearings on the proposed budget. The public hearings on DC government agencies began today, June 3rd, and will conclude on Thursday, June 24th. It's important that we hear from our communities and that everyone's voice is heard during this process, as it helps Councilmember Nadeau advocate for specific items in the budget, and so that other members of the council get an opportunity to hear from Ward 1. If there's anyone interested in testifying, submitting testimony, or comments for the record, you may reach out to the respective committee that has oversight on that particular agency. Councilmember Nadeau chairs the Committee on Human Services, and our first budget oversight hearing is on Monday, June 7th at 9 a.m. on the Department of Disability Services and Office of Disability Rights. And I'll drop the link in the chat to the fiscal year 22 budget oversight schedule for a complete schedule on all hearings, and also my email in case anyone has any questions or concerns. Thank you.
Any questions, commissioners? Are there any questions in the chat?
I do not see any at this time.
Thank you. We'll move to commissioner announcements. Are there any commissioner announcements?
I have one announcement. We are hiring for a new admin for the commission. Please stay tuned for details on that. We will have the job description posted on our website. And if you have any further questions, you can reach out to me at 1b12@anc.dc.gov.
Commissioners, other announcements? We'll go to community announcements.
I do believe that we had some folks from my SMD that wanted to address the ANC. I have not heard from them in the chat or the Q&A yet, so.
I did hear from someone. If you would like to speak, please raise your hand and I can take you off of mute. And I see you right here, Olive. I'm going to take you off of mute.
I'm off mute?
Yes.
Yep.
We can hear you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Olive Vassell, and I live in the 2200 block of 12th Street Northwest, and I've been working with, my neighbours and I have been working with Commissioner Orlasky for quite some time regarding our concerns over a new building that's going up at 2220 11th Street Northwest, which is actually behind our 4 houses. And we have concerns for several reasons. First of all, about the size of the development, which is 60 units and 6 stories high, including a penthouse. And so we have concerns about the sheer volume of people that will be in that very small space, which was formerly the Children's Hospital Clinic, if I'm sure everybody knows about that. So apart from the size of the building, we have concerns about the parking issues that it's going to cause throughout the neighborhood. Only 9 spaces are assigned to that 60-unit building. And as we all know, our area, our neighborhood is already experiences a high degree of parking issues with all the sort of people that we have coming to enjoy our great entertainment venues. So we're very concerned about the parking within the neighborhood, and the 5 houses that I told you about, including my own, have also concerns about the way the parking has been arranged, which will mean encroachment into our backyards in order for the vehicles, the 9 vehicles, to exit the parking lot. So there are a variety of issues that we are very concerned about here, and I'm sure that there are many of my other neighbors throughout the streets that will be affected that are present here tonight. So among the questions we have is, why the ANC was not consulted. According to our what we were told, you guys were consulted about this project and about the parking space issues, etc. I've been kindly invited by Commissioner Ewart next week to speak in detail about this at the Transportation Committee hearing. So we'll actually give a sort of longer, more detailed sort of explanation of the issues there. So that's it in a nutshell. It's been a lot of emails back and forth with Commissioner Olaski, but that's it in a nutshell.
Thank you, Olive. I also want to add a little bit to that, because I realize that this building might seem like a very localized issue to the larger ANC, but it's a lot bigger than that. We have 6 new buildings in my SMD alone. I don't know how many more if you count neighboring SMDs. Another building going down the street that's going to be a 40-unit building that has 3 parking spots. What I've heard from my conversations with city officials is that they're relatively unconcerned about this. And I think that that's not a very proactive way of looking at what is going to become a major issue if it isn't already. And since we do have representatives from Councilmember Nadeau's office and from DDOT and other places, I am very interested to hear what you have to say, and I would hope that you would come maybe to the Transportation Committee meeting next, I think it's 2 weeks, Max, is it, Commissioner Ewart's 2 weeks from now?
It's next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday, thank you. To address this, because there is an opportunity now, before a lot of these places are fully finished and built, to address an issue before it becomes a major problem. And something that, I think is absolutely necessary to do. And I see Patrick Nelson is here from ZPD, and I'm sure he can explain the zoning rules that allow for this to happen. But I think that it's more a factor of the practical effects of these rules that allow for these things to happen, and not the rules themselves. I can quote the zoning rule too and explain why they can get away with this, but I think it's a very bad idea and it's getting worse. So thank you, Olive. Appreciate your time. And appreciate you being here. And I know there's a couple of other of your neighbors, and I appreciate you guys coming too. And
Commissioner
we can
Orlowski,
actually make some headway. Yes.
A couple of questions. Is this a matter of right?
Yes.
So it wouldn't come to us because there's nothing.
Yes, that's why it didn't. Yeah, that's why it didn't come to us, because it is a matter of right. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean they couldn't have come to us. They just did not.
Understood.
Require zoning. They didn't require any zoning variances.
I do think you bring up a very good point that we need to address somehow, is just the overall redevelopment of areas. And I think that's what you were getting at with the comment of it's bigger than this one, it's looking more holistically.
Absolutely, yes.
And we should think about how to address that.
Yes, and we do have, the Economic Development Committee will be taking up the Housing Finance Administration building project at some point too, and that's another one that will be a very large residential building. It will provide a lot of great community benefits, but we have to consider other things, that the unintended consequences just as much as we consider the benefits. And I think this is the time when we need to be doing that.
Commissioner Ewart.
Thanks. And Olive, thanks for speaking and for reaching out about speaking at the Transportation Committee meeting. I just want to I'm going to expand on this more next week, but I think we have different perspectives on this, and I don't want to like beat around the bush with that, but I do agree that in the sense that if we're going to do transit oriented development, which is what we're doing, we're in a transit area, highly trafficked transit area, we have to have more effective transit options, because if we don't, more people are going to move to this area and they're going to bring their cars because that's their only viable option for moving around. So I do think that this is worth a discussion. I think it's a very complicated issue, and I'm happy to be discussing this next week in a little bit more detail.
We did have a couple of additional questions in the chat. One had to do with the zoning rules that allow for this, and I think you touched on them, Commissioner Ewart. Because of the proximity to the metro, zoning regulations allow for the normally required number of parking spaces to be diminished by, I believe it's half. Then there are other provisions that allow a developer to take advantage of certain things that will let them cut out parking spaces. All of this is in the zoning regs, and I believe if Patrick wants to expand on it, he can. It's rather complicated and something that I can address individually with people if they'd like to. There was another question about why aren't underground parking options being considered for these buildings. I have actually broached that topic with some of the developers, and most are unwilling to do it because of cost. I don't have a better solution than that, unfortunately.
Mr. Nelson, you have your hand up?
Yes, I was waiting patiently without chiming in. Just a couple of things just for education of how this works. First of all, this parcel, as was said, is being built as a matter of right, which means that as long as they're applying the regulations of the code, they don't have to come in front of any government agency to ask for anything but a permit to be able to do it. This is zoned as an RA2 zone, which abuts an RF1 zone, which Olive lives in. And that's part of the problem, but that's a zoning related issue. And as Dan Orlowski stated, that there are a number of things that apply to any construction project that have multiple units. The DDOT has for all intents and purposes, decided that cars are no longer a viable option and has advocated strongly to reduce the number of parking spaces. So in a building that's being constructed, there's a requirement of for every 3 units you put in one spot, but then if you're within a certain radius of a metro station, that reduces that number. And so all of these issues are what's complicating the whole issue related to parking. And then there's also the accessibility of how to get into the parking and where to put it on the lots. Most of these buildings are not big enough to have underground parking, so they just won't put it in. So there's a multitude of things. And as Dan said, there's a number of them that are coming up that are issues that relate to how parking is being done. And it really boils down to what the code says, what DDOT rules are in place, and adhering to those rules.
I think there's one other thing that probably should be mentioned. It does have to do with political will. And you mentioned it that currently the political will here is to eliminate parking. It's to discourage private ownership of cars, and that's kind of the issue that I'm bumping up against when I can see down the road a problem with traffic and parking, and the answer I usually get is, well, we're doing this because we don't want people to have cars. But unfortunately, I find that to be aspirational and not practical. But I only have one voice, unfortunately.
I'd just like to
be honest with you, Dan. That's been an issue that's been on the table for a long time. I mean, I can speak from experience. You know, I've lived in my house for 30 years, and Deborah Thomas has lived in her house for probably a lot longer. I won't say a number because I won't embarrass her, but this is not a new rule. The GDOT's been pushing this for many years. They are adamant about changing that, and instead of changing the rules to respond to voices from the community, they've actually gone the other direction and made it less. The last round of zoning changes, and when we did the 16 rewrite, they lowered them down again. So it's certainly not going in the direction you want, but it is what it is. So
I think you'll notice cars haven't really gone away either. So
no, they're not.
That's just my 2 cents on that. I don't know that.
I would just like to note that looking beyond DC, there are many cities across the country that have far less transit options than DC that are eliminating their parking minimums. Also zooming out, we have a climate crisis. Also zooming out, people are being hit and killed by cars at huge rates in DC. So while it's maybe not the conversation everyone wants to have, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you keep building and catering to cars in your zoning and developing, then there's going to keep being a need for cars. So it is a huge shift, and one that will be painful for people. But from personal experience, I don't need a car or don't need to drive in the city. So it's as Commissioner Ewert said, a much more complex issue.
Okay, you got the last word there. Are there any other community announcements?
We did have one other person from this development who wanted to speak. Shayna, if you would still like to talk, please go ahead and raise your hand. If not, then we can go ahead and move on. We'll just wait a couple seconds.
Was that the underground?
And I believe so, but she would like to speak, so I think we should go ahead and do that. Okay. You can unmute yourself.
Hello.
Hi, we can hear you.
Hi, thank you. I'll just make this quick because I really echo everything that Olive just said, and I appreciate all the information.
I'm so sorry, Shayna. Can you get closer to your microphone? I think we are having trouble hearing you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
And I appreciate it. I'll make it very quick because I echo everything that Olive has already expressed. I live at 1111 W Street, which is in the same block as the building. And I appreciate all the information that has been provided. It's been very helpful, especially the explanation about the zoning rules as it relates to being near the metro. And I appreciate Commissioner Pulaski's viewpoint on continuing to fight on this issue, because I'm a single woman who has a car and who already has an issue finding parking in the neighborhood. And I'm just fearful of what's going to happen as more people come into the area, because it's not just the residences. The residents, it'll be their guests. And, you know, when you combine that with the people who are already searching for parking because of the lack of parking due to the streeteries, it's just gonna kind of become untenable. And so I will be definitely looking to attend the other meetings and to try to become more educated on the situation, and just appreciate the information that has been shared tonight. Thank you.
Are there any other comments?
There are not.
Okay. We will move to new business. Commissioner Delaney.
Thank you, Commissioner Turner. Only one item that I wanted to bring up around sponsorships. We have a couple of events starting to happen in DC, and it's high time I think we get back to sponsoring events as the pandemic opens closes back down and things start to open back up. So I want to propose 3 sponsorships at $500 to the committee. The first is for Hoops for All Foundation. The second is Long Live Go-Go's Juneteenth March, and the third is for Ward 1 Mutual Aid. I motion that we approve the funds for these 3 sponsorships effective after this meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
What was the dollar amounts on them? Because I believe what I reviewed ahead of time was different. And so they're all the same now?
They're all the same. Yep.
Okay.
All for $500.
Great.
Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you. Commissioners, are there any other comments you'd like to make before we close out the meeting? Okay, thank you. And our meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.